There's just something about pointe shoes that makes them almost impossible to throw away. And that's exactly what today's episode is about. I'm joined by Emily, a fellow adult dancer and the founder of PointeReve, a small business that takes used pointe shoes and turns them into beautiful keepsakes and works of art. What started as a love of giving well-worn items a second life has grown into something that feels deeply meaningful for so many dancers, especially adults. In our conversation, we talk about why pointe shoes are so special and what they represent for us as adult ballerinas. We also reflect on why dead shoes in particular carry so much meaning and how Emily upcycles them into pieces that display and hold the memories we make in them. If you love pointe shoes, whether because of what they represent, the beauty and craftsmanship behind them, or the stories they carry, I think you're really going to love this conversation with Emily. And so, without further ado, let's get into episode 100 of the podcast. Thank you, Emily, so much for being here today. It's so fun having you on the show.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me. Love your podcast, and I am so excited to be here. This is just, it's not to be cheesy, but it is a dream come true. So thank you for having me.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. So I would love to kick off just hearing a little bit about your adult ballet story. I love asking fellow adult dancers this because I feel like everyone's journey to ballet is so different. And so I would love if you could share yours with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I took ballet as a child, but I wasn't, one of those pre-professional take classes all the time. I took classes as a child probably from the ages of 8 to 13, once a week. I started taking ballet, tap, and jazz when I was super young, and then I stuck with ballet. I was obsessed with the aesthetic of it and how pretty it looked, and I took it recreationally just as a kid, and then stopped and picked it up in college. I had a roommate who did drop-in classes, and I went with her sometimes. I only did that for, I don't know, was maybe 6 months. And then I started again at the ripe age of 30, I believe, 29 or 30. So I came back for more.
What was the catalyst for this return at 29 or 30?
So I went to see our local production of The Nutcracker at our local company, Ballet Austin. And I was sitting in the audience, and they always advertise adult ballet classes. And I was like, what if? Wait, that's possible? Like, I can go drop in class? Wait, what? That was like a part of me that I had put away, and I didn't think it was possible. So I took a class, and it was very humbling. I was excited to know the choreography or some of the words, right? But I was like sick to my stomach, nervous. But I went back for more because I loved it and I'd missed it. It's really weird, but I have very distinct memories of like the smell of ballet shoes and the sound of slippers on the floor, and I wanted that back. So I really decided to go full force with it. I was in 2023, I was diagnosed with emphysema, which is a lung disease. I used to be a cyclist, but I could no longer keep up with high intensity endurance bike rides. So I decided to just stop cycling and take ballet a little bit more seriously. And now I go several times a week.
Yeah, I love that. And honestly, thank you for sharing that you were super nervous. Like when you said I was sick to my stomach nervous, I'm like, thank you for sharing that because I felt that way also. And I think that that's probably something a lot of people experience, but don't always admit like how nervous you can be coming into a ballet class, even if you danced as a kid.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It doesn't matter. It's so nervous. And finding a studio who is so supportive of adults is huge. And now when I see newbies, whether they're returning or it's their first time, and they look lost and confused, I am like, hey, you can get behind me. You could watch me. Because I know that feeling all too well. And you just want to get the most out of class. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's such a great attitude to have. And I think it's easy the longer you're in class to forget how scary that is. And so I love that you shared that because I'm like, yes, I was also sick to my stomach. Like I remember being in my car in the parking lot getting ready to go in for my first class and having that like knots in the stomach, like a little bit nauseous and being like, oh God, am I doing this? I'm doing this. Okay. But I think it's, if you dance for years, you start to forget that like that's probably an experience that a lot of people are having right before coming in. So we all just need to be nice.
Exactly. And the adult community is so supportive.
Yeah.
So very, very grateful to be a part of it.
Yeah, yeah, I love hearing your story and how you came to it, and it's really cool too that it was something that could fill what I imagine was kind of a void after doing cycling.
Yes, I had missed being part of the cycling community, just having a sense of community around something you love. I feel like that's so important. You make friendships, you have shared goals, and when that was gone and I couldn't keep up with that, I was devastated. I had a big struggle with that. So this was my other outlet, and now I just couldn't be more happy and proud of the girls who I go to class with. We all cheer each other on, and so yeah, it's great.
I love that. And you've had some opportunities to perform, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh. So I take classes at two different local studios, which first of all, I'm so grateful. I know that's not something everybody can do. So I am so grateful, even if it's a little bit of a drive for me. But one of the studios does performance opportunities for adults. So I did that Cracker, and I did three different roles, and they're doing a spring show. So I was actually, before we started talking, I was looking at the audition information. So I think I'll do the spring show as well.
Oh, it's so exciting. I love that. So I want to talk now about your point shoe upcycling business. So you have a business called PointeReve. So maybe we could even start with how that name came about.
Absolutely. So the name came about Point Rev. I wanted to upcycle point shoes. I'll get into a little bit of the background of my inspiration, but I wanted a name that was whimsical and had to do with dreaming because when I had stopped doing ballet, every now and then I would have a dream about dancing on point shoes, which is so bizarre to me as somebody who had stopped doing that for years and didn't think about ballet. So I wanted something whimsical and dreamy. And, of course, ballet terminology is in French. And so I was looking up different French words for dream, dreaming. And I was like, okay, Rev, I can say that in English. It's a little different. So that's how I came up with Point Rev and created an Etsy shop. So right now I'm on Etsy, and I took a pause, but I'm excited to be back on there and create more things that I've been inspired to make. So
I love that. So how did this all start? Like what was the very first inspiration of like I want to take used point shoes and upcycle and turn them into something beautiful?
I've always loved I love interior design, firstly. I grew up watching HGTV with my mom. She has an eye for design, and I love anything creative where you get to make. I saw it was on Pinterest or the internet, a beautiful pair of decorated point shoes. And I looked into them. This was maybe 8 years ago, and they were created by an artist. And she created these most stunning point shoes. And I always wanted to get a pair. I'm like, no, like they're expensive. So years later, I saw them again. I was reminded them I was on Pinterest or something, and I was like, you know what? I bet I could do that. I bet I could make something similar. And I'll mention her so you can tag her as well. But she is an artist based in New Zealand. She currently does not create anymore, but her business was called Recovering and Point, and proceeds to her shoes went towards her recovery funds for mental health. And she was one of my biggest inspirations. So I can't talk about it without giving credit to her because she is just has created absolute masterpieces. But I remember seeing them, I went to a performance And, sometimes they'll sell the point shoes signed by the dancers. And I just thought, oh, that'd be so cute, but decorated. Like they should, really put some rhinestones on it or some velvet ribbons. Like that could be flipped.
Yeah.
The idea of taking something old and making it pretty, making it yours. I love that idea. And so I just decided, okay, let me just experiment with this. And I did. And I thought, why not just start an Etsy shop to see if anybody would be interested? Like, let me just see what happens.
Yeah, I love that because I think that's part of why I just absolutely love what you're doing too, beyond just like, oh yeah, they're pretty shoes. I'm like, no, I love this idea because I'm very similar and I love taking things that are used or old and upcycling. Like my husband and I recently moved this past summer, and pretty much all of the furniture in our living room and stuff we found at like thrift stores and Facebook Marketplace and sanded and painted and changed out the knobs and did fun things with. And I love that idea of giving old things new life and turning them into something beautiful versus them just going into the garbage or landfill or, so I love that you have that eye that wants to take something that is used but like has an inherent beauty to it and
Exactly.
make it even more beautiful. Such a fun idea.
So many point shoes end up thrown away. I first started collecting shoes by asking our local professional company, hey, like, do any of the company members like have shoes that they discard? And they do. And so the manager of the ballet company, saved a bag for, like, asked the company dancers, and I was like fangirling. I mean, only a ballet person, only a ballet girly would understand, like, fangirling over a sweaty old shoe, right? Like, oh my gosh, so and so wore this. But he saved a bag for me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna do something with this. I'm gonna experiment, and I did. So they're just special, and you can make it yours, and something anybody can do. It doesn't have to doesn't have to look a certain way. It doesn't have to look professional. Like, it's something that anybody can experiment with and make theirs.
And I think like there is just something that even non-dancers, I think there's something about point shoes that
Yes.
just feel very special. And so I just love that you're giving them a new life as something that we can display. Because it's like I have had even pairs of my own old shoes. Once they're dead, I'm like, I don't want to throw them in the trash. Like, this is hours of work and sweat and like, but
Exactly. And breaking those in, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just sweating how hard it is to break in pair of shoes.
yeah.
I think that's why they're so special. They hold memories. I like to upcycle vintage fabrics, vintage jewelry that I find, and add those elements to my shoes. And so to me, there are just so many stories that can be in one pair of point shoes. The person who wore them, the rehearsals they went to, the performance they wore them in, and then the vintage fabric that came from somewhere, the vintage clip-on earrings that belonged to somebody. There's so many pieces of history, stories, and I think there's so much beauty in that.
Yeah, but that like literally gave me goosebumps when you said that they hold memories because I think that really is like I think you put your finger on it because I've always been like gosh like I think we all feel that there's something really special about them like whether they're our own shoes or anyone's shoes, but I think it's because when you are a dancer you know that they're not just the shoes, they're all of the memories and the things that have happened in them. Yeah, I completely agree. Thank you to Apollo Performance Wear for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. If you're an adult dancer, you know how important it is to take care of your body so you can keep showing up to class consistently. And that's why Apollo has been part of my routine for over 3 years. Their compression products are truly my most used support and recovery tools, both in and out of the studio. The magic is in Apollo's use of graduated compression, the same compression level used in medical recovery garments to help increase blood flow, reduce swelling, and help reduce the risk of injury. Their products are podiatrist approved and designed to support dancers through class, recovery, and everyday life. My personal favorite is their Jewel socks. They fit perfectly both over and under point shoes and slippers, and provide targeted arch and ankle compression without covering your toes or restricting mobility. They come in multiple nude shades as well as ballet pink, so they blend seamlessly into your skin or tights without cutting your lines. I also love their K-Warmer full-length leg warmers, which provide compression through the entire leg and offer knee and ankle support, as well as that extra warmth we all love. For daily wear, I use the Performance Crew socks, which feel great inside your sneakers or your favorite house slippers, making it so easy to support your body's recovery after class. It's also Apollo's #1 bestseller, with over 1,700 reviews, so you know it works. You'll find me in Apollo socks during ballet class, pointe work, travel days, and running errands. For adult dancers focused on longevity and recovery, their products are truly a game changer. Head to apolloperformance.com and use code AFTERCLASS10 for 10% off your first pair until March 31st. So tell me about your very first pair. Was it for yourself? Was it a gift, or how did that happen?
My first pair was an experiment, believe it or not. I had some pretty lace, just some scraps of lace. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to put this on a pointe shoe. Let me just see how this would look. And I placed on the pointe shoe and looked at him. Oh, I love this. Wait, but you know what would look really great if the lace had pearls on it. So I sewed pearl beads to the lace. And then I would lay it on there. And then I thought, you know, it would be really great if this had a pretty trim around it. Extra romantic is if there was a vintage fabric on the inside that kind of corresponded or matched the lace. And I think one was slightly different than the other because I was experimenting. And they were purchased on Etsy by, I believe, a photographer who wanted to buy them for her still photography. And I was like shocked. I was like, what? Oh my gosh, somebody bought my work. This is so weird. So that was the first pair. And I was just absolutely thrilled. I thought, okay, I mean, if I like them and would buy a pair, then maybe somebody else would. And they did. It's been, a little slow, of course, but you know what? Doesn't matter. Sometimes looking for the right thing takes time. So I hope to be that. I hope somebody finds their thing within my pointe shoes.
You also do like the process where people can send you their own pair, right? So it's not just what you've had listed on Etsy that maybe you've sourced from other dancers. People can send you a pair.
Exactly. So besides having the pointe shoe or pair, the occasional pair that I work on, I really enjoy doing custom pointe shoes. I like dyeing them, so I'll talk about a little more when we get into the crafting part of it, but I enjoy dyeing them. So even if a dancer just wants them a certain color, I use actual dye and a certain application method. I don't use the pens or the markers. But if somebody wants to commemorate a certain role that they had in a performance, I use pictures of their costume and all of the details from their costume and the colors and kind of the style and theme, their personality. A lot of things go into my, picking the details. But I'll use that to come up with a pair of pointe shoes for somebody.
And I'll link in the show notes so that people can see not only your store, but like all the photos, because I think it's when you see it, you totally understand what you mean, that you pull from the costuming and like the role itself, that the shoes can then embody whatever that role was instead of just being like a plain pair of satin pink. Like I've seen some of the ones you've dyed and they're just so beautiful. You did a pair that was kind of a turquoise color, right? That is just so beautiful. I was like, oh my gosh, these are so gorgeous. You also too, it's interesting. I had never seen anyone do this before I saw your work where you line the inside of them with fabric. And I'm like, man, that probably is not super easy, but it is gorgeous.
Thank you. It is not very easy. And I was inspired by Annika, the artist. She did that. And I looked at it and I studied it and I looked at it and I thought, I'm going to try that. I'm going to see if I could do something similar. And so I pleat the fabric and line the inside and sew it with elastic clear thread so you can't see the stitching. And that is the longest part of the process. That takes the absolute longest. Trying to get athletes even. But also it's so exciting getting to pick the different fabrics, the different textures. My favorite pair or my favorite shoe that I have done, my friend Brooke was in the Nutcracker with me and she was Clara. So I had a picture of her in her costume. And I literally took that picture and a plain point shoe and went to look for dye and fabrics and trim work that would match exactly her costume. So
Oh.
I used white eyelet fabric for the lining because she had an eyelet detail on her dress. She had blue satin ribbon on her dress. So I wanted to make sure the shade of blue satin ribbons on the point shoe would match. So I have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, it's cool because it kind of reminds me of like if you took a memory box and the type of things you put in a memory box and you turned it into a shoe. That's really what it becomes, which is so cool because a memory box, it's like, no, you're just gonna stuff it away somewhere. But turning it into a shoe that you can display, it's like you get to relive those memories. That's such a special thing, I'm sure, for her to have those in her home, and every time she looks at them, she gets to remember being Clara in the Nutcracker.
Exactly. Exactly. I like that. I like your explanation of it being a little keepsake box.
Thank you so much to Frenchie's Hairpins for sponsoring today's episode. I love partnering with brands that I swear by, and Frenchie's has been my go-to hairpin for years. What makes them unique is their no-slip velvet coating, and they really are the only pins that can hold my long, thick hair in a ballet bun or French twist. And I mean actually hold. I've truly put these pins to the test at ballet classes and intensives, dancing all day, sweating, jumping, turning, and my hair does not move. The velvet is soft to the touch and doesn't scratch, so they're gentler on your scalp than traditional pins. And major bonus, they come in color matching shades, so they disappear into your hair. If your ballet bun is constantly betraying you, Frenchie's just might change your life. Use code AFTERCLASS10 for 10% off your order. All the details are linked in the show notes. Once you try them, I promise you'll never go back. I know we kind of jumped in with the pleating and the lining, but maybe you could tell us about the process and how that has
Oh my gosh.
evolved over time.
Yes. So I first started with just putting lace and trim and details on the outside. But I've learned the order in which is most efficient to create them. And I first start with the brainstorm, like, what do I want this to look like? So I get a vision in my head of, okay, I need it to look like this. I want it to be a certain theme. These are the colors. I want it to be, mostly flowers, or I want it to be sparkly. And then I sew the lining on the inside, and then I do the ribbons next after the inside. So I work from the inside out. Then I cut a new sole actually out of cardboard and I covered that with fabric. It's like faux reupholstery and put a new sole in it so that the inside looks very fluffy. And then I will do trim. Sometimes I do trim on the outside near the ribbons. And then I will dye the outside, or if I just leave it plain, sometimes I just leave it the natural shoe color if I want a more vintage worn-in look. And then I actually do the outside last, and that can be hard because I just want to see it all done. I just want to see the vision on the shoe, and that's the most obvious part. But I have to be very patient with myself, and yeah, I do the embellishments, the lace, sewing the beads on, or the little fabric flowers. I do all that last. And I will like rearrange things. I will sometimes take pictures and send them to my mom or my friends and say, hey, like, what arrangement do you like? Because I can just spend way too long looking at it and then wait, what if it this way? I like possibilities. So, um, so inside out.
Yeah. So how long does I mean, this is probably hard to say because I'm sure every pair is different, but is there like a ballpark of how long it takes to do a pair?
Pair of point shoes, probably a minimum of 6 hours, depending on how much dyeing and sewing is required. 6 hours is probably the minimum time I spend, and that includes like planning. I think the longest time I've spent on a pair, oh my gosh, was probably at least 8 hours. Those were, I did a Taylor Swift bejeweled pair. They were like Eras tour themed. I had a poster of her in her one of her bodysuits for the Eras tour, and I used that as inspiration and bejeweled rhinestoned every surface of the point shoe. And that took a long time, and I had to step back at one point because my eyes were just going crazy. Yeah, that was the longest time. One point shoe can take maybe about 3 hours, I'd say, for a single point shoe, but it just really depends how custom that the piece is.
Yeah, and I mean, for anyone listening who hasn't seen Emily's work yet, like when you see them, you understand. Like they are works of art. I mean, it really is amazing, like the level of detail. I've seen, people maybe do like a couple little things here and there, which is great, but like yours is a full shoe overhaul.
I love the details. I think that's what makes it special, and it's just a passion. I love all the little details I notice. I love it.
Is there an aspect of the business that you enjoy most as far as creating something that's purely out of your own desire of like, oh, I want a pair that looks like this versus getting a commission of someone that's like, hey, this is the idea. Can you do this? What are the pros and cons, I guess, for both?
That's a great question. Ooh, I love both. I love being able to put my visions, my own personal visions and inspiration, and see it come to life. So, personally, for example, I love anything shabby chic, pink, pastels. So, anything that looks like that, I love being able to make it and see my style come to life. That is so exciting. Cons to that is that's not everybody's jam, right? And sometimes those ones like I made a pair like that, and those ones are not purchased yet, which is totally okay. They're waiting for the right person. But if I saw them, I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, like how did somebody not snatch those?" And then I love creating a custom look for somebody because it's like a creative challenge. How can I get where it looks and feels just like this costume or just like this person? How can I
Mhm.
embody that in a point shoe? It's just a different type of creativity. Because for my own inspiration, I'll use what I have. But if I'm creating a pair for somebody, I will go out and try to find things that fit that look. So it's just a different type of creativity, I suppose.
So, do you have any tips because you are uniquely gifted at doing this? And I know there are people who are probably like, I would love to do something fun with my point shoes, but I wouldn't even know where to start. So, do you have any fun DIY upcycle tips for people that maybe have a pair of used point shoes that are sitting around their house? They're like, I want to do something fun with these.
Absolutely. So, my advice for anybody who wants to try, just dive into this and have some fun. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid and make it uniquely yours. So, personally, I prefer dye over paint. I did try experiment with like acrylic paint. I've never tried with oil, but paint to me is messy and it really, really stiffens the shoe. So I would recommend experimenting with dye. I'll put a little tutorial on my Instagram page to show kind of the dyeing process. It's a lot simpler than it looks, and anybody can do it with some basic RIT dye from the store. So, and then I would also recommend using a variety of textures: silk, velvet, cotton. So, whether that's fabric or the trim, or using lace, maybe adding some rhinestones, add a variety of texture to the shoe. Makes it look really dimensional and makes it look really unique. That's what makes it one of a kind. I use earrings, like clip on earrings,
Oh, yeah.
vintage stores that I find that adds a little bit of pop, some 3D, some texture. So definitely texture, color. Don't be afraid to use color. Sometimes I leave them plain. Sometimes I don't dye them, but don't be afraid to experiment. And you know what? At the end of the day, it's your shoe and you made it, and you should be proud of that. There's still a story behind it.
Do you have an absolute favorite pair to date that you've created?
My absolute favorite pair I've created was one that I sold, and it didn't become my favorite until this past year. They were my Waltz Flowers point shoes. I got to be a Waltz Flower in the production of Nutcracker this year, and I was like, oh my gosh, I created a pair of Waltz Flower point shoes. These would have been perfect. I do have the picture of them on my Instagram, but they were covered. The whole thing has a light pink lace on it with flowers, fabric flowers and pearl white sewn on. And those had a pair of vintage earrings that I found with like a fuchsia gemstone with a little butterfly. And I did a magenta lining on the sides. Oh my gosh, I love this pair so much. I think the customer who bought them said that they were going to a friend who had performed as a waltz flower in the Nutcracker. So I'm just happy that somebody gets to use them or display them and celebrate that moment in their life. But that was my favorite pair.
Oh, you have to make a pair for yourself now.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah.
So if someone wants to do a commission where they send you their shoes or have you do a specific pair for them, is there a way that is the most seamless for that process as far as like, do you like when people send you inspiration pictures or things like that? Like, how would that process work if someone wants to do a custom commission with you?
If someone wants to do a custom commission, I would say whatever works for them. I know that creativity looks different in different people. Some people can visualize it, others can describe it. Some can do one or the other or both. So I would say whatever works best. You can message me. I'll share my email and or DM me on Instagram. If you want to message me and just talk about what you want and your vision, that's a perfect place for me to start. And then, I mean, if you can get more detailed and say, oh, here's a picture, here's a close-up of the costume, here's a, picture of this, here's the color schemes I want. That's a great place to start, but not necessary.
And I'm sure too, like, because I know that there are some people that are like, I don't know what I want, just do something, and you're good with that too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. If someone says, okay, I want something like this. I want something blue, but I don't like it to be super girly and I don't want rhinestones. I could be like, okay, great. I will create an idea and maybe a little draft, a mock-up, and give you some color samples, and then we'll go from there.
This is just such a cool thing for the people who get to work with you, and then also for you, like to have something where you can just combine two passions of loving dance. Like I love that you're also a dancer and you obviously have personal love for ballet, and then you also have this talent for making things look beautiful and crafting. And so to be able to like marry those two talents is such a cool thing.
It is so exciting. I feel so grateful to be able to have both of those in my life. And this is an outlet. I'll find myself very like tired or overworked or overstimulated from a week. And I'm just like, you know what? I need a craft. And so this is just my passion project, my outlet, something to exercise creativity. And I am very lucky that I get to do both in this lifetime.
Thank you so much for sharing about your personal journey and sharing about your lovely business. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to link all of Emily's information in the show notes so that you can connect with her. I'll link her Etsy shop. I'll put her email. So if you're interested in doing a custom pair, you can connect with her. But thank you so much, Emily, for being here. It was so fun having you.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much for listening. If this episode was helpful or encouraging, I'd love for you to share it with a friend or leave a quick review. It's one of the best ways to help more adult dancers find this podcast and feel a little less alone in their ballet journey. All the links and resources mentioned today are waiting for you in the show notes. I'll meet you back here next week after class.